Have you ever wondered why America's Got Talent Champions doesn't do live voting, but instead uses superfans? Well, I found out the reason, and boy, it's a humdinger. You don't want to miss this video. Let's do this. What's up, y'all? It's John Masterly, back with another AGT expose. Yeah, I realize a lot of our videos recently have been going behind the scenes and trying to show how America's Got Talent is really manipulating what viewers see on the show and how that's causing so much controversy, in particular with so many of the acts this year. However, this video actually has a fun twist to it. It's not so much an expose as opposed to a bit of history in terms of how AGT Champions actually came about and why you can't do live voting. Now, if you watch the show this year,
we've got our panel of super fans. They are America. They're men and women from every state, every corner of the country, and they are here to vote for the acts they believe deserve a spot in the semifinal.
They had made pretty clear that voting is actually done through this group of super fans, a group of people that have to apply to become these voters. And apparently they represent all 50 states, although we don't actually know who these people are, nor how many they are. And there seems to be a bit of controversy of whether or not the audience members actually are voting as well, considering that people who went to the live show said they could actually text to vote as well. The fact that I know all this does bring up one of the other things that the show producers don't actually talk a lot about, but the show isn't live. It's actually pre-recorded. Filming was done back in October. Not only was filming done back in October, but the winner was actually picked back then as well. And I think a lot of people still don't know that, which is why it's so confusing when people are debating what happens to the show. Is a show fair or not, given what's been going on? The reality is that all this drama has little effect on the show outcome. So you might be asking yourself, why would AGT do that? It's so utterly confusing, considering that their core brand, the normal AGT show that is on every single year, uses a different format. Why did AGT Champions switch to this non-live, pre-recorded super fan format? So if you watch AGT, the regular show, you know that so much of the show is predicated on how these acts come in and showcase their talent, and the people get to vote who gets through to the next round, right? It's that dynamic back and forth that has made this show really one of the most popular reality competitions, not just in the United States, but worldwide. I mean, there's over 50 some of these shows now in all countries of the world. People love it. And so that format is what's ingrained in people's heads. Well, along comes AGT Champions, which uses a different format for the show. And the show producers tend to be pretty coy on why that show format exists, when I think they should just flat out say like everything is pre-recorded and here's who the super fans are. Why create so much confusion? But in terms of why this show came about, you gotta go back a couple of years, because AGT Champions is only on its second season. Now, supposedly Simon had said that he's been thinking about doing a Champions version of the show where he invites people from all over the world to compete, the best of the best, but he never pulled the trigger on it. In other words, he never had that much faith that this was something that was worth doing, which means that he was sleeping on the job, because another person from a competitor had the exact same idea. And that was the executive producer of the show, The World's Best. A person by the name of Mike Darnell basically said, I want to create a show of this nature. He signed a deal with CBS, and they committed to finding these talents from around the world. And that's when the producers of AGT woke up and said, whoa, 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 someone's coming in and starting to eat our lunch here. Maybe we need to start thinking about doing our own show. And so that's when they started to scramble, go like, we need to do this. In fact, this Mike Darnell guy, when he was asked, well, what do you think about AGT? Finally said, we're gonna try to do the same thing. His answer, that's okay. We're ready for the challenge. We've got the next new spin on the variety show.
CBS presents a new show that will completely redefine a genre.
So it was back in February of 2018 that CBS ordered the show, The World's Best. And at this point, the show producers of AGT were scared witless. I mean, they were desperate to do everything they can to prevent this competitor from coming on the scene. And it wasn't until May 2018 when NBC announced their version of AGT Champions. AGT was really concerned that all the best talent will be locked into the world's best, making it very difficult for AGT to be the show where they discover the talent for the first time. And I think you can see that, right? As we start to see more of these competitions go global and artists jumping from country to country to perform these shows, acts are starting to get a little repetitive. We're starting to see the same acts come up again and again from different countries. By the time the show producers for AGT Champions started to get things rolling, the World's Best had already locked in 6 contestants who had been on the past Got Talent show. And considering that there are only 28 performers total on the World's Best, we're talking about 20% of the lineup. In other words, 20% of the people that performed on the World's Best was stolen from the Got Talent network. The show producers at AGT were not having this. So when the World's Best was announced that they weren't going to be on TV, on February 3rd, 2019, the show producers for AGT trumped them by saying, well, we're going to be on TV on January 7th, 2019, 1 month earlier, just to beat them to the punch. As you can imagine, that made the show very difficult to produce. They literally had to scramble in half the amount of time that they normally would need in order to put on a show of this nature. And that created one of their biggest problems to date. And that is that AGT continues to be a show that they film through the summer, which means at around the fall time, that's when they're recruiting a lot of the new talent. And because the staff is really shared between AGT and AGT Champions, well, the show producers basically had to use the off season to film AGT Champions. And that off season is around October or so. So that's why the show is filmed back in October, even though the show airs around January. That's the only time the staff has available in order to be able to make this show happen. And second, they were trying to beat a competitor to the punch. So they've locked themselves into this scenario, created a whole new set of rules to show that, well, because it's not live, there's a whole set of super fans that are gonna basically make this happen. That's it. That's the reason why the show isn't live, and that's the reason why you can't vote. So the interesting question is, well, did this work? Were the show producers for AGT able to hold back the competition? Well, it seemed like they were able to. And in fact, the World's Best ended up struggling trying to get some of these additional talent because AGT started to recruit them as well. And if you're an up-and-coming talent, would you go with a new show that's unproven, or would you go with the Got Talent network? We're not just talking about going on one show. We're talking about access to be able to perform on these different shows around the world. And even though the World's Best had a huge push from CBS, that included the post-Super Bowl spot when they first premiered. I mean, that is the most primo spot to get positioned, to get airtime on TV. The Super Bowl is the most expensive, the most watched show in the United States. So if you were able to get the show that comes on next right after that, you're going to get something that they call a lead-in. A lead-in, all these people who are just naturally going to watch the next show. And yeah, the World's Best had killer ratings for that show. Unfortunately, the mix of talent ended up being kind of questionable, and they had their own controversies as well in terms of what they did to manipulate the show. And so far to date, the World's Best still only has 1 season. CBS has not renewed for a 2nd season at this point. Not only that, if you were to go to the World's Best YouTube page, all of the past performances, I mean literally everything is gone. It's just one big blank page. So you can't even go back and enjoy these amazing performances from Dimash or TNT Boys and Danalia, or even the winner, Lydian. Oh my God, it's making me teary-eyed. God, I love that. This amazing piano prodigy from India who could play 2 pianos in one and a bunch of other different instruments. Just amazing. All that content gone, which is probably not a good sign that this show is going to get renewed at this point. So while you can argue that the show producers for AGT really scrambled to put AGT Champions together, and that it was pretty messy the way they pulled it off, and that the show format is very confusing, it did successfully stop a huge competitor from coming in and eating their lunch. That's why they ultimately committed with this format. But now that the show is on, it is proven to be a very popular show. So my sense is, given that how successful this 2nd season is turning out to be, despite all the controversies, you can expect that there will be a 3rd season and a 4th season. Not just because I think that the show is going to be successful, but probably because it's a strategy that the show producers are using to prevent any other competitors from trying again. So there you go, you all. You finally understand why they're using superfans and why you cannot vote. I know a lot of you are hoping that this format will change in the future, but unless they switch to a live format, that's not going to happen. And as of right now, it seems like it's going to be very, very tricky for that to happen, especially given that so many of the judges and so many of the show producers and so many people that work on the show are the same people still. All right, y'all, peace out.